Hi, I'm Gio.
And I'm Renee, and this is Listen to Me podcast, where you get all the greatest in unqualified advice from qualified creatives.
Basically, we go through it so you can think of something funny to put here.
You already used that.
I can't think of anything. It's
I
the
think
plug.
you used that one too. Basically, we go through it so that you don't have to figure out how to make all of your authorly horse girl dreams come true. Oh, how are you today?
Oh, just a happy horse girl.
I was never a horse girl. Have you ever been around horses?
Yes. Sorry, I was going to say something, but I'm answering your question.
I was here for it. I was waiting for you to answer.
I kind of was a horse girl.
No.
Yeah, how do you not remember? I was obsessed with horses and like unicorns and Pegasus and like ponies. Like I was obsessed.
Is that why you liked my ponytail so much? Because it was like horsehair.
That 7-foot ponytail.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, no, that's not why. It's just because you had a. Never mind. I was gonna make some type of horse joke. I'm good.
We're really on it today.
I think we're both quite snoozy.
I like snoozy. That makes me laugh.
When you're just like a little bit tired, and so you're
everything is hilarious.
Everything's funny. Yeah, I'm just like giddy as hell.
Poor Jessica. I'm really excited about our guest today. I'm going to just roll right into it. So Jessica Renwick.
You're boring, Gio. No, I know.
We're snoozy. I like that better.
I'm feeling snoozy.
The next time somebody's like, oh, you seem really down or like low energy, I'm going to be like, no, I'm snoozy. I like it. So our guest today is Jessica Renwick. She is a middle grade fantasy author who I actually had the pleasure of meeting in person. She is one of the people that I have had the great fortune of collecting through the internet. That makes it sound weird. Okay.
No, but I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, there's so many people you collect.
But you know what I'm talking about? Like you go online and you put yourself out there on a social media platform and you're like, these are my interests. And for me, that's writing. And that's how Jessica and I initially connected. And then we found out that we were relatively local because we're both in Alberta. Mm-hmm. And we attended a writers conference last year in 2019. Shout out When Words Collide. That's actually happening, or it happened this past weekend virtually. And Jessica and I met each other in person, and we were both relieved to find that the chemistry we had translated to real life and not just on the internet.
That's the best, is because like the conversations that you have, you're like, I hope that this is real, because it is never real until you're in the same room.
That's right. It can be really different because obviously when you present yourself online, it's a certain way, or even by text it's a certain way. So, and we didn't spend that much time talking to each other, but it was really nice to get to know her in person after such brief contact that we had online, or like our introduction online. Her first published body of work is the Starfell series, which includes the Book of Chaos, the Guitar of Mayhem, and the Bow of Anarchy. And the fourth book in the series is coming in spring of 2021. The Book of Chaos has won a bunch of awards. The 2019 Book of Excellence Award winner in children's fiction, 2019 Children's Literary Classics Award winner for middle grade general, and the Guitar of Mayhem won 2020 Book Excellence Award in children's fiction.
Lovely.
Thank you. I didn't breathe that entire time.
Like most recordings.
Oh my God.
I'll just slow it down for the listeners. Her body of work consists of...
You can cut all of this out.
I won't. I'll just put it on repeat. Let's get into the entrevue. What is that, interview in French?
I think so.
Entrevue.
Hi. No, we can't hear you. We're really good at reading lips, though.
I have not the best mic.
Yeah. Hi, Russ.
Yes, my IT guy is helping me.
How lucky that you have one.
Right?
So I'm just going to get you to actually leave and rejoin, and it should rejoin with the new audio setup.
How do I tell them that?
They can
We
hear
heard.
you right now.
Oh,
Thanks, Russ.
This is how computers work, honey.
Apparently, I'm not good at tech.
All right, so she'll be right back.
Okay. That's so funny.
That's very cute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, oh, that's so much better.
What
Yay.
would I do without Russ? Like, I'd still be sitting here.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'd be using like my half-broken Google Pixel headphones to do this interview if not for Clay.
Yeah.
Oh, we're so excited that you're here.
Yay! I'm
Are you
excited too.
excited? Yay! Okay.
Could
So
you imagine if she said no?
I would be like, and booted. No.
Yeah, you're fired.
How have you been today?
Good, busy. No, it was like 30 degrees here today, so
Mhm.
that was
Really warm.
crazy. Trying to sit in my office upstairs wasn't working for me.
Editing? Were you
No.
courseworking?
I was doing the not fun stuff of uploading ebooks, re-uploading ebooks. Oh my gosh, I had this nightmare with Ingram Spark because I had my ebooks through Ingram Spark distributed to Kobo and Nook and iTunes and all of those places.
Yep.
So I didn't have to do it all myself.
Yeah.
Except back in May when I released my third book, I put the first one on sale for 99 cents, but that's only for like a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I changed the price back on Ingram Spark, instead of changing it, they sent it again. So there's 2 copies of my books in all these stores, one for 99 cents, one for $2.99.
Oh no.
Yeah, and then Amazon matches to those other stores. So then kept it matched to $2.99, and I was selling like a whole bunch of ebooks, but I only make like 30 cents off of a 99-cent ebook.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it'd been going on since May, and Ingram Spark was like, oh yeah.
No, Jessica.
Yeah,
No.
I know. I sold over 1,200 books in the last 3 months and made no money.
For $2. Oh.
Yeah.
Is there any way that you can go back to fix that? Like just because of that error or no? That's
Oh.
Yeah, no, because Ingram Spark was arguing with me saying that it wasn't their fault. But then I was talking to Kobo and the other retailers, and they were like, well, we're getting it from Ingram Spark. Like, it's not our fault. So I eventually ended up actually going through the Better Business Bureau to get Ingram Spark to finally do something about it, because it'd been months.
Wow.
And then they finally did, and it was like an IT problem.
Oh my God. And they're trying to pass it off as your fault.
So now this week, I have to set them all up myself on all these platforms, and it takes forever, and I have to adjust the ebook to like each of their configurations and each of the proper links to the right, like to make sure they're within Kobo or within Nook. So I've been doing that and it's not that fun.
This is a glamorous life of a self-pubbed author.
Yeah, it's a lot of work that like, it's not the fun part.
Yeah.
on the flip side though, I'm not to be like that person to be like, well, you're learning, but it's I always find it's those IT tech things, like even for me doing like web, that you learn so much when there's a fuck up. And that's what I find where it's like, oh, I actually learned something, which is, and when you're like, I'm going to rip my hair out.
Yeah. And it will be for the better because now I have more control of them. And each of those platforms has their own little promos you can run through their platforms, which when I'm through Ingram Spark, I don't have access to those promos. So I will probably actually sell more now.
That's actually great.
I hope so because I do sell a lot through Amazon, but I'd rather be wide and try and sell other places as well. And with Amazon, you can't target Canadian customers, but with Kobo, you can.
That's awesome.
So it'll be good in the end. I've just been pulling my hair out for a few weeks.
Yeah.
So speaking of the end, why don't we go back to the beginning?
Oh
yeah. Renee's like, yes, segues.
Segue queen.
Yeah.
So Jessica, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
I'm Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi. I live in Alberta and I write middle grade fiction. I do write a bit of YA as well, but I'm only published for middle grade, which is for ages 9 to 12, if people don't know. Mostly fantasy and a little paranormal now. I have my paranormal series coming out starting in September. I started writing when I was a kid, a long time ago.
Mhm.
And I started out writing stuff and making my parents read it. It was definitely not any good. My first novel would be when I was 13. I wrote like 100 Word document pages, and it was this really silly story that wasn't even really a story. It was like a day in the life kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I was into the Saddle Club series at the time. So of course, if you guys don't know what that is, it was like super popular in like the 90s and early 2000s. And it was all these little books about girls and their horses. And I was a horse kid. So I wrote this big, long nothing about 3 friends and their horses and made my parents read it all, of course. But my mom was very cute about it, and we went and looked in the Saddle Club book at the copyright page and found like the Bantam Books address on it. So we printed it all off and sent it to Bantam Books, and
Cute.
I got a really nice rejection letter about how they don't publish books written by children.
They're like, that's exploitative, but if it were legal, we'd do it.
Yeah, right. Yes, definitely. This would be a bestseller. Yeah.
I was a bit
Yeah.
of a horse kid. So you're preaching.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was telling Renee before we started the interview with you. I was so that kid.
You guys are
Well,
crazy. Have you ever
yeah,
seen
I-
how big a horse is?
They're
Come on.
huge.
Yes.
They're huge.
I own 2 of them, so
Oh
I
my-
still have horses as an adult. Yeah, I grew up with them, and I was that kid that was just obsessed with her horse.
They're beautiful. I never had one. I just had like the Barbie version.
Those are pretty cool too.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
the foot that went like this when you push the
Oh,
button.
nice.
Oh, I remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it made
Those are
noise. Yeah.
Very realistic, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I had a few of those too.
So, Jess, I read the first 2 books in your series, the Starfell series, the Book of Chaos and the Guitar of
Mhm.
Mayhem. And because I know you, because we are
Yeah.
friends, internet friends and real life friends, I definitely saw like parts of your life in the book. The characters
Yeah.
like to drink tea, there's a garden, and there's even like a character that's a chicken. And I was like, oh, the chicken.
So many people have said that. I've had people who don't even know me say, "Oh, you sold me on the fire-breathing chicken." And I was like, "Yes."
Talk a little bit about how you've layered stuff into your writing, like the stuff that you enjoy in your life now, other than horses.
The horse doesn't come in till book 2, I guess. I was kind of natural, like, so for a long time, I was trying to write more literary adult stuff. And I decided that I love middle grade. I have 4 nieces and a nephew, and 3 of my nieces are in that age, right for middle grade. Their ages 9, 11, and 13. So I started reading, started reading books with them, and I was like, oh, I love middle grade. I'm going to write some middle grade. And then it's just funny, as I started writing that one, it seemed like because it was maybe something I was having a little more fun with, that more of myself went into it. Like after Russ read it, because he read the very like early drafts, and
Yeah.
he immediately was like, I see like so much more of you in this than like anything else. And I think it was because with it being middle grade and more, I guess, of like a genre than like a less serious thing, that I was having more fun with it and more relaxed maybe. So more of myself came out into it. And especially like given what I had just gone through in my past, I was doing a lot of very serious writing about that kind of stuff before I wrote the middle grade. So it was almost like a huge switch in gears for me, and I just had so much fun with it.
What made you go from a more serious tone to the middle grade?
I just wanted to have fun with my
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah.
I had been through a lot of serious things, like with my divorce and the whole domestic violence. I'd gone through the court system and all, like a lot of heavy stuff for a few years. It was just like, hey, I need something like lighter that I can have fun with.
The joy and the coziness of those things, like it makes me happy to read about them, and it makes me
Yay.
feel really at ease. And I think like that's actually a really good way to touch on some of the themes in your book. Like, so you have like a female protagonist, so there's like the young girl. Fable is the main character of the Starfell series. I like Fable a lot. She's really interesting. Like, she's stubborn and she's courageous, but she also like tries to be a good kid, and she kind of like does what she wants a lot of the time.
Yes, she does. She's a leader.
Yes, she's a leader. I don't want to say
Yeah.
bossy because I
Right?
hate it when that word is like assigned,
Same.
especially to girls or
Girls.
female children. How did you develop Fable in your mind? Like, did you kind of say to yourself, I want to write a character that I would have fun following along on their adventures, or were you trying to like appeal to your nieces, or?
Yes and yes. I definitely had my nieces in mind when I was writing it, but I also had kind of myself in mind too, like when I was a kid, what I would have wanted to read and kind of like the role model I would have needed in my life. So I kind of had Fable dealing with a few things that I dealt with as a kid. And it's almost like me wishing I had dealt with it the way she did.
Mhm.
So as like an example that I could have followed as a kid.
Can you say like specifically something that comes to mind?
So at the beginning when she's like kind of being forced to hide herself and trying to
Mhm.
be forced to fit in, and just kind of like when I was a kid, I just like fell into that because I was very timid and a lot more timid than Fable and less stubborn. But I kind of fell into some stuff like that, and I got bullied as a kid and just like desperately wanted people to like me and desperately made choices that weren't true to myself. So I kind of had Fable like facing some of that kind of stuff and just being like, no, this is who I am, and finding her way through.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting because you're touching on this idea of like authenticity, and
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like something that was reflected in your own writing journey. Like you were like, oh, I want to write in this literary genre because, you know, like maybe you thought it would match kind of the heavy stuff that you were dealing with. Or
Yeah.
if you're like me, who as an adult is still desperate to be liked, but I have talked on the podcast
Same.
before. Yeah, right. I've talked on the podcast, you know, as an author who's still struggling to emerge, so to speak, if I'm going to use the industry parlance, I'm craving that validation, and that like the traditional way to get it seems to like break into literary,
Yeah.
right, or like poetry, and it
Yep.
almost feels like you found your authentic voice as an author, which is something that we hear about a lot. Like you and I have both gone to conferences and there are like whole
Yeah.
panels about people talking about their author voice and authenticity.
Absolutely. That was never my intention from like the beginning of my writing, was to get into middle grade. But then once I started, it was just so much fun. And then after I decided to self-publish, I had so many good experiences with the readers, like at my book signings, talking to kids. And then after I've had kids email me, I had one mom
Aww.
email me, and then we talked on the phone, and her daughter did her 4-H speech about me and my book. So she interviewed me. It was really cute. Yeah. So like,
That's so
right?
cute.
Right. Was like so heartwarming. And so like experiences like that, I was like, I love writing for kids. If they like you, they like love you.
Mhm.
You have their undying loyalty.
Right?
It's so true. I've worked with kids
Mhm.
from like an art perspective, and
Yeah.
if you can engage with them and connect with that creative side where they are
Mhm.
not afraid to kind of explore that side of themselves, and you're
Yeah.
encouraging them, you've got them with you. Like it's such
Oh
a
yeah.
it's very magical.
Yes, especially doing anything artistic with them. I was an EA for a while and I really enjoyed doing that, but I find doing the more artistic and the creative stuff with them is like you can really connect with kids and really encourage them. And art is a way to encourage kids to be themselves and to be authentic. I just did a day camp with two little girls, a creative writing day camp, and it was really good. Like the one little girl has cystic fibrosis, so obviously her mom didn't want her out doing like the public day camps. So we just set up for me to come to their house, and we were safe about it and sanitized everything. And it was just her and her best friend. And it was just the best. It was so much fun. And I brought character sheets and world building sheets, and we did all this creating and stuff together. And they were both really shy at first. And by the end, we were like best friends. It was so awesome.
That's
And they
amazing.
were drawing their characters and coloring their worlds. And yeah, it was so cool.
I was just about to ask you if you had any plans to doing any workshop with kids, but you beat me to it.
Sorry.
No, that's perfect. So do you see that as a potential thing that you could do in the future, like recurring?
I would like to. Yeah, I guess it's just waiting out this pandemic to
Yeah.
figure out the logistics of doing that and to find a place to do that. That one just worked out because I went to their house I do have my books in a really cool art shop in Red Deer now. I just brought them there last week, and she wants to do some workshops and stuff there once everything's calmed down a bit.
So I was doing a bit of snooping on your website. I noticed that as well as being an author, you also offer editing as a service. When did you decide to make the shift towards freelance editing, and like why? Like what was the...
Well, that was very recent. I finished my certification in May, and I went through the Writer's Digest University and did the whole copy editing course. And I really enjoy working with my editor. It's totally leveled up my writing game the first time I edited, and she's like amazing. And she really like kind of changed my whole writing life. Like I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now without having worked with her. So I enjoyed it and thought if I could help other writers, and thought that would be something I would enjoy doing from her end. I finished that in May and just started offering services, and so far it's going pretty good. I've actually done a lot of critiques like that are shorter, just a few chapters, and I don't know, it's just fun. And it's fun working with writers who are just kind of starting out, and they get really excited when they see the changes. And when they send it to me again and I tell them how it's looking better, they just get super excited about everything. And I just really enjoyed it. And it makes me feel like I'm kind of giving back after I lucked out finding my editor. She's just amazing, and she gave me a good deal to start out with.
But there's something to be said about that collaborative nature within any creative field, is when you're bouncing ideas back and forth and you're able to, like, I work predominantly by myself. So I always find it when I am working with other people, if that is the case, like when they're actual like other creatives, not just a client, you get so much more because you have that eye that's relating to what you do, and then you're able to actually get constructive feedback. And it's, I don't know, your work is always so much better.
You probably face the same thing in art as writers do, in that you've looked at it and looked at it and looked at it so much, like hours, that it's almost like warped in your head, like into, you just don't pick up on other things or other ideas. Whereas a fresh set of eyes looking at it can give you just that feedback. And a lot of the time she'll pick up things that I'm like, what? Like, I know not to do that. Why did I do that? Or why did I not think of that, kind of thing? So just having that other set of eyes just makes such a big difference.
Now, are you editing for like a group of people? Like, how many, like, would you call them clients?
I have several clients, and I've had several clients. They're all separate people. And I've done some academic papers as well. I obviously prefer doing the fiction.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's the fun stuff. But academic papers pay the bills, and I had one girl really excited about it, and her thesis is getting published. So
you're contributing. You're helping, like not to say like, listen, we are not by any means like of a certain age, but you're helping like another generation. And when I say generation, not like age, I mean like a new fleet of writers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because there's new writers coming in from every age. There's lots of people just kind of starting out, even their 40s and 50s, right? So
as someone who is published now, are you finding that working with these writers that you're able to inspire them? Like, are you able to pass on some energy that would help them feel like, let's keep this going?
Yes, and I find that a lot of new writers need that. I know I did as well, especially like if you have zero recognition, you're not out at all yet, it can be so demoralizing and exhausting.
Absolutely.
I have one client that I went through her book with her, and she entered it in Rev Pit, and she ended up winning. And it was just like so good, because she'd been working on that book for like a year. She kind of had like me and some critique partners that were really being her cheerleaders. And I'm so glad that she continued on with it and entered it in that, because then she won, and she so deserved it. And it was just like that moment of being like, yes, all that, like a year of work, it's finally like something's happening.
Jessica, one of my favorite things to talk about as a writer, especially right now, man, I have been I'm rewriting a young adult book. You were talking about YA earlier.
Yes.
So I'm writing a young adult book that I have been writing since 2012.
Good for you.
Okay, so I'm sure you know this as a writer. this book has gone through like 65 different iterations because it started as a really rough draft that I did during NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. Not a sponsor, but it's nanowrimo.org if you're interested.
It's super awesome.
It is. So why don't you take us through what it looks like for you when you're, like even starting with the idea of a story and then you're going through your drafting process into finalizing and editing. So take us through the conception and birth of your book children.
Okay. Well, I get ideas just at weird times, like when I'm in the shower or walking my dogs or whenever I'm not thinking, then I get my ideas. But often I'll sit on my ideas, as you probably know, I sit on them and don't actually do anything with them for like a few years.
That is the same. Yep. Have you ever heard what Neil Gaiman says about how it's like you have an idea and it rolls around in your head until it collides with something else that's been rolling around in your head for a while, and then you're like, both those things together
would be good. Yes. Yeah. I have had stuff like that happen, and I've had stuff that I've started writing, and then, well, I have a lot of stuff on my computer that I've started writing, and now it's going over there for a while because I don't know what to do with it.
You're letting it mature.
Yes, I'm letting it, think about things. But when I actually finally decide to write something, I have learned since on this journey of becoming actually published and actually finishing a book that outlining is actually a really good thing. A lot of people don't like to hear that, but it does really help clarify things in your brain before you even start drafting. But I do keep my outlines very flexible because once I start drafting, I will often get like better ideas and, I have to change this like while I'm drafting. So I have to make sure that I don't get it in my head that I'm like stuck in stone, that this has to happen and this has to happen.
I think most people who are discovery, if I can call them that, discovery writers and get mad when you're like, you should use an outline, think that the outline is carved in stone, so to speak. Yeah. The outline can also be a draft. Yeah. And you can discovery write and get excited about what you're writing as you're writing to, as you said, like a flexible outline, and then change it when it doesn't fit.
Oh yeah, because you can write an outline that's like 10,000 words.
Yeah.
And that's basically a first draft.
For a middle grade book. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So I always do that first. And I have since learned, as I've continued on with my more recent books, I have a big whiteboard up on my office, and I have split it into like the first act, the second act, and the third act, and I have sticky notes for plot points that I want to hit, and I stick them up there so that I can get like a good visual of everything, of where I want the story to go, and I can see the story arc. And that helps me with drafting a lot, because I am a bit of a discovery writer, but if I sit and have a blank page and like nowhere to go, then nothing happens. So I always do that first, and I usually take a few weeks to do that, and even then it'll always change. I've never completed a book that stays on the plot. In fact, I'll get like 5,000 words in and be like, I have to have this one thing happen, and then I have to go back and replot everything because it all changes. So it's a bit chaotic at first. And even in my first draft, I can't remember who said this quote, but it's something about like you're just shoveling sand into the sandbox, and then you're creating your sandcastle later when you revise. That is exactly like what I do. My first drafts are like so terrible.
As somebody who is not a writer, what does a discovery writer mean?
Oh, that's a really good question, actually.
Yeah, that's it's someone who, I guess, they enjoy looking at a blank page, and a lot of time it'll be like a character-driven type of story, so they don't necessarily know the plot or where it's going. Some people will sit down and they don't even know what the ending will be yet. I always have my twist in my ending first. I always know where I'm going with that, because that seems to be the ideas I get in my head first. But yeah, a discovery writer kind of explores the world and the characters without 100% knowing the plot yet.
That gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
It is anxious. Yeah, but it's interesting that you make that point, Jess, because I never thought of it like that. I am a discovery writer for sure, and I almost never know how
Yeah.
stories that I'm writing end. And I think it's interesting that when you have an idea and you kind of think of the twist and the ending and you're like, I got to work back from this. So I got to go back to the beginning and then work up to it. For me, usually, and this is part of the reason that it makes it hard to finish stuff is because I get these ideas that are like, what if this person was in this weird ass situation? Like, what would happen next? Instead of like, this is what happened and then working back.
But that's a fun way to write too.
It is.
And that is actually how I did my first book, The Book of Chaos. The other books were more, I had the twist at the end first, but the first book, well, okay, so the first book, I'm going to give away what a huge nerd I am.
We love that.
Yeah, Russ and I play D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, and we have a campaign that's been going for like years, like a weekly campaign. So when he first started it, we had to create these characters, and Fable is based off of my character in that campaign because he asked me to write a backstory for my character, and I wrote him like a 3,000 word essay that I thought, yeah, this actually would make a pretty good book. Yeah, but he wanted our characters to each have like something crazy happen to them before all of our characters met. And mine was that she found this crazy book and it ate her friend.
That's the plot of the Book of Chaos.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So that's where everyone always asks like, oh, where'd you get the inspiration for your first book? And I always think like they want some like dramatic story of my childhood or something, and it's like, should I tell them I play Dungeons and Dragons? I'm like 36 years old.
Okay, you vomit the sand into the sandbox.
Yes.
Okay, so you're in your first shitty draft stage, let's say.
Yes.
So then what happens next?
After that, I usually leave it for like a few days to let my brain like soak it all in.
Or like, I don't want to look at this anymore.
Or I don't want to look at this because I might cry at how terrible my rating is. So once I like feel better about myself, I then go back in and I start revising. Sometimes I already have like ideas in my head of what I want. Well, I usually know by the end, like it's kind of like itching at me. I need to go fix this chapter and change these things. So I'll usually go and do like all that first, all that big stuff that's in your head that you know needs to be fixed. And a lot of that is plot stuff and character arcs. Like I'll look at plot stuff first and then I'll do another pass with my character arcs. And I kind of do a pass with each character's arc because it's like pretty intense sometimes when you like change their arc at the end because you're like, oh, this would have been better, and then you have to go fix every chapter. They should have done this or they should have said this instead. So it's like picking out all these little pieces that you have to fix. And then when I'm finally done doing all that takes me the longest time. Like it takes me just as long to revise that stuff as it does to write the first draft. So then I do all that. And then I do another pass, making sure my settings and my descriptive language and stuff like that is better. Because sometimes I'll just be like, they're at this place in my first draft. And then I'm like, good enough. Like, I know what it looks like in my head. I'll deal with that later. Yeah. For my last few passes, I go in and give myself a copy edit to make sure my prose is okay. Because I would hate to send another book to Talina and it not be better than the last one I sent her. So
yeah, Talina Winters is your editor, right?
Yeah, and I'm always thinking that. I'm like, oh, I don't want to like disappoint her, like by sending her something that's like worse than the last.
It's her job to read your draft.
Yeah, I know.
Like, gotta make it really good. Talina's like, why is she giving this to me? It's done.
Yeah, like I don't need to do anything. No, I wish. Like I said to Gio earlier, as a writer, you've been over it so many times, your eyes will just slide right past stuff. And even your editors will too after going over it so many times. So
you're self-publishing, but you've also been trad-pubbed, traditionally published as well, yes?
Just a short story.
Just a short story. Okay. Yeah. So what were both of those experiences like for people who have not done either?
Self-publishing is a lot of work. There's pros and cons going both ways. With self-publishing too, you have to really be, I guess, sure that your work is up to par. it's expensive. Like it does come out of your own pocket to pay for that editing and those assessments. The traditional side, it's very difficult to get traditionally published. There's a lot of great books out there or great stories out there that will never be published or have never been able to get published that way.
Yeah.
So that can be tough, and it's a lot longer. Like it's a very long process. Like it's longer than self-publishing because you have to get the agent and then go through the submission stuff. I know, so for my short story, I didn't need an agent or anything like that. He just had a call out for stories about girls who find mythical objects and how it changes them and the world around them. And I just thought, this is right up my alley. So when I saw his call for it, I just wrote the story and sent it in. And luckily he liked it and I got accepted for that. So then going with him, I went through the same process with having a developmental edit and having a copy edit and having a proofread. It was the whole same process, but I didn't have to pay for it. Yeah, but that's a short story. So I know with novels, it's a lot more involved. There's nothing wrong with either way that people want to go. There's pros and cons to both. So,
yeah.
And you have to invest time. I'm spending so much more time on marketing than I ever thought because nobody else is singing your praises out there. So you have to.
Yeah, because the publisher will have like contacts or deals and they'll put you on, they'll just like, or even like they'll pay for starred reviews of your books or for news outlets to review your books, and then that becomes this thing of like a distribution. It's like movies in film studios distributing them, right? It actually does have a huge impact.
Even like editorial reviews, I do have some on my books, but as a self-published author, you have to pay for those. Well, I mean, publishers have to pay for them too.
Yeah.
And so if you're self-publishing and you're paying for an editorial review, it would be disappointing if it wasn't very good.
Yeah, no kidding.
So you have to invest a lot more in yourself. And I think being self-published, you really do have to have confidence in yourself and your writing and to be able to do that because it is kind of scary, right? Like to submit your book to editorial reviewers, or I've submitted mine into some contests, like award contests, which people, self-published authors kind of have mixed views on that, like if they're worth it or not. I think for writing for kids, it is worth it. It's made a big difference with getting trust from parents and teachers and stuff because you're writing for their kids. So you want to make sure the editorial reviews are important and winning awards does help. I've had parents come up to me in Calgary at the One Chapters and tell me they read my review from the one award that I won for the first book, and that made them want to come check me out.
Yeah, that was the Book of Chaos, right?
Yeah.
So which awards have you won?
I won the 2019 Book Excellence Award for Children's Fiction and the 2019 Children's Literary Classics Award for Middle Grade General. And then I won the 2020 Book Excellence Award in Children's Fiction for the second book in the series.
So are you submitting?
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I was excited. I had no idea like how it would go because they get like hundreds of submissions, right? So it's like, oh, well, I'll just submit and see what happens. And then it's very exciting when it goes your way.
Yes.
Yeah. Cover design too for self-publishing.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Good covers are not cheap. But
but you have more control over your cover, right? When you're paying for it.
I've used 2 cover artists and I love both of them. And it's definitely important to look at their portfolios and see and make sure that they fit your genre as well. Because that's a big thing when you're paying for advertising your books, like on Amazon. If your cover doesn't fit the genre, people don't want it. They won't click on it. Yeah.
I was looking at a book yesterday. A friend of mine was showing his cousin's published book, and it had to do with like mental health for gay men. Oof.
Not a good cover.
Like,
listen,
as a designer,
if I see rainbow on a book geared towards gay men, I just think like, no, girl, no.
It makes a difference if people will buy it or not, right? Like if people look at that and are like, ugh, they're not gonna buy it.
Okay, segue queen. That's a really good segue into another question. So, because we're talking about the publish industry and stuff like that, I have ranted previously on this podcast on my small soapbox It's large.
Yeah.
Potentially, Gio might have just cut it out because he has the unglamorous task of listening back to our recording and then just like cutting out all of my but anyway, so I've talked about like the push toward diversity in publishing, and one of the barriers to entry of self-publishing and traditional publishing is network opportunities, visibility, and money, right? So self-publishing, if you don't have financial resources, it's a harder game to get into. But then the publishing industry overwhelmingly favors white, straight, cisgendered authors, predominantly men, but also women, right? Like there are a lot of women, straight white women who have been published. Whose books I may or may not have picked up and gone, why?
Oh, yeah, we've had conversations like this before.
We have. Yeah. So I think it's important to talk about, you know, as white ladies writing, which is the name of the next podcast that I start. No, I'm just kidding. Nobody needs that podcast. That's no. Why it's important to include diversity in the books that we write too. And obviously, as white people, we're going to get it wrong. But I think that it's important. I think that there needs to be a push for own voices, which is a movement in the publishing industry for authors of color and different sexual orientations and gender identities to be published with their stories based on their lived experience, or even fiction that they write that is partly informed by lived experience, but also for people who are cisgendered and straight and white, or not part of a visible minority group, to write stories that include diverse characters, because people need to see themselves represented. Like that's huge. And especially for children.
Yeah, I worked in a school there, even here in Alberta now, there's very diverse. My classroom was totally diverse. It wasn't like, it's not all just white like it was in Alberta when I was a kid. There's so many people here now, and they need to see themselves in books. So I think diversity is very important. And I also know that I, as a white writer, I would never write a main character of someone else's experience, though. Like I would have diverse characters in my book, but I think that if I were to try and write a story about a Native American kid, or like, and have them as the main character and it be about their experience, I don't think that. Instead, we need to promote those writers to tell their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Because those are their stories to tell, and they've been so traditionally suppressed in the publishing industry and ignored. Yeah. So is that was your intention with the Starfell series when you wrote it? Like, how did you approach writing diversely?
Well, I knew that my main character would be a white little girl because that's my lived experience, and I'm not going to co-opt other people's stories. But it was very important for me for her friends and for other characters within the stories to be diverse. And I guess coming from a fantasy angle, it's probably a little bit easier because my world is a made-up world, so I don't have to delve into the politics. They can just look a certain way and be treated normal. So coming at it that way, it was just important for me for kids to see kids that would look like them in the book. And then I also do have a couple in there, a gay couple, and that was very important to me. I have family members and lots of friends who are LGBTQ, so that was very important to me. And I was actually a little bit nervous about that in middle grade, not nervous about that for the rest of the world, but a little bit for Alberta, the school visits and stuff that I was doing. But it was very important for me to have that in there. So I did it. And it's gone over very well. Actually, in the one classroom visit I did, we talked about it. The kids were really funny. The one kid was just like, yeah, my uncle's gay. Another kid was like, another little girl's just like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. And it was like really good. Yeah. Because the teacher brought it up and she was just like, yeah. And she was so good about it because she even said, like, I was nervous to like read this part to you guys, but I shouldn't have been. And we're all learning. And this is, she made it like a really nice little lesson for a little grade 5 class. It was great.
Yeah, that's an important point too. It's like, even, man, that's how I kind of feel about writing diversely too, is like, we can't co-opt other people's stories, but I feel really strongly that white people have a responsibility to understand how these systems are suppressive and oppressive historically and right now, not just like before in the
Yeah.
before times. As an author, when you're doing research into diverse characters and kind of like unpacking your own biases and like learned things that you've internalized that you don't necessarily realize, it is really important, but it also affords this opportunity, like you said, when kids are reading it, to actually just talk about it
Yeah.
and be like, okay, now we can confront or challenge this as well. And there's nothing other than the fact that we live in Alberta, the conservative bastion of Canada. So much of our world is compulsive, like that heteronormativity just like permeates everything, right? And there's nothing inappropriate about a gay couple, right? Like the way that you represent Fedilmid
Yes.
and Algar,
Yeah.
they're a couple, but they don't do anything inappropriate. They're just like any other straight married couple in a children's book. Like they live together, they bicker slightly, which I can definitely relate to. They make meals together and they care for the people in their lives. And that should be the kind of normative representation that we have of all kinds of couples. We're going to touch just a little bit on this, and I know that you and I talked about this before, which is in the first edition of the Guitar of Chaos, or the Book of Chaos, I should say, sorry, not the Guitar of Mayhem, which is book 2. There is a word that appears in the first printed edition.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it, so just a content warning that this is an ethnic slur. If anybody doesn't want to listen to this part, you can skip it. So the word is gypsy. And it was used in the context in the book where it's like describing, I would even say like bohemian, like aesthetic.
Style.
Like, style, like bangles and swooshy skirts and stuff like that. So you had mentioned to me what happened around that, and I'd really love to hear you talk about that.
I guess this is showing my rural Alberta raising and just not necessarily knowing any better. That word just kind of like rolled off my tongue when I was writing it, right? And like she wears long skirts and the bangles, like you were saying, and the big hoop earrings. And to me, I didn't think anything of it because we kind of grew up, children of the 90s, with like movies like The Hunchback of Notre Dame and stuff like that, right? I didn't even think about it. Then a while later, I was reading and all the more liberal stuff, I guess, learning about that kind of stuff. And I saw that like, oh, that's like considered a slur. Like that's a bad word. And nobody had ever mentioned it to me, never in a review, anything. But it kind of clicked in my head, like, I think I used that in my first book. And this was after the second book was already published. So I kind of went back through both books, and sure enough, I did use it in the first book early on, and I think it's the first chapter. I didn't use it in the second one, but I did use it in the first, and I was like, I don't want my work to offend anyone, and I don't want my work to be associated with that kind of attitude or that kind of
like upholding that
slur.
kind of
Yeah. So I was kind of like horrified. Luckily, I'm self-published, so I just and I had wanted to reformat them eventually anyway. So I just found a formatter, a girl that I really like, and I did the little Control F for that word to make sure there wasn't any more, and removed it. Then had her do the reformatting of it and uploaded it onto KDP and Ingram Spark. So now in any book people buy now, it's not in there. And I was able to do that with my ebooks too. I just went back and edited it out.
We're moving into this sort of space where people are being called out and called in publicly and personally, offline and online. It's important to remember that when you learn new information, all you really need to do with it, instead of taking it personally and being like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person. Like, you just need to sit with it. You need to examine your biases, but then do what you did and be like, well, I'm not participating in this anymore. You know, there was a time when maybe I didn't know better, or I wouldn't have even known to look into this. And now I do know. So I'm correcting it. I'm taking the steps I need to not to engage in this stuff.
Yeah, like language is important. And especially with kids, it's forming their views of the world. And I would hate to be participating in forming children's views to use words like that or think that that's fine when it can really hurt someone.
Yeah, and perpetuate stereotypes for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Gio and I do this like creative power up thing. So if you can think of anything that's inspiring you lately, and if you want to share it. Jess is like, absolutely not. It's 38 degrees here right now.
Yeah, I'm dying. Inspiring me lately. I did just purchase, is it The Artist's Way? I think that's what it's
Oh,
called.
I've heard of that book.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I just started going through it.
Yeah.
And she talks about writing morning pages. So getting up
Oh.
every morning and
Mhm.
writing like the 3 pages. And so I've just started getting into the book. So I know there's more.
Yeah.
But that is actually pretty cool because I'm a person that has like pretty high anxiety. Just that's my life.
Also
And-
pandemic. Yep.
yeah. And just writing those 3 pages to empty your brain of all your worries and everything,
Mm-hmm.
get it out of your head before you sit down to write anything else. It actually does really help you focus and really help. It's meant for not just writers, like for everyone, anybody doing creative stuff. Like
Yeah.
empty your brain and then all your worries are written down over there and you can go to work.
Yeah. Leave them on the page. The page can hold them and you can go on to do other stuff. That's awesome.
I've started doing that because definitely the pandemic has affected my creativity for sure. I've been like,
Oh my God. Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for coming and thank you for listening to me.
It was good to meet you, Gio.
You too. I want to hear back when you get your copy of The Conscious Creative.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited.
Oh,
to
that's
win.
right. Yeah, Jessica was our giveaway winner.
Yes, and I enter like all the giveaways and I've never ever won. So
Hey, it's a
I'm so
sign.
excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was meant to be. Yeah.
It's so good. I think you're really going to take a lot out of it.
Mhm.
Thanks so
Okay.
much,
Thank you.
Jessica.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so
having
much.
me. I'm so glad you had me. Okay.
Bye. Do you have any power-ups? You know what mine is? I had a bath in a clawfoot soaker tub last night because it was in our hotel room.
Are you talking about with the feet? You need to post that on the Instagram.
I will.
If this will make it into the episode, you have to post that on to be like, this is
I
the
will.
tub that I soaked my body in. So you're inspired by taking a tub in a fancy
A hotel room.
God damn it. We're right back to where we started.
You're like, what's the word? Room.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So that's inspiring you, or it's like at least like
No, it
giving
was
you a
just
little
nice.
boost.
It was
Yeah.
nice to disconnect from reality and do something that I feel really grateful to get the opportunity to do because it was like such a last minute thing and we had the money to do it. And I know that things won't always be that way. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do it, man. And I got to like wade into a glacial lake and freeze my feet off. And
I didn't even know you were going.
because it was like super last minute. My cousin literally called me and was like, can you meet us? And then I had to like call my mom-in-law to see if she would take the dogs. And
You're yawning while you're talking.
yeah, I'm tired.
I'm like,
And it's really warm in here.
I was like, do you want me to cut that? Like, you're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah. I'm like,
Yeah,
really, bitch?
I do
We're
want you to
recording!"
cut that. Let's record our outro so that you only need to use that part. Oh my God.
Yeah, because I don't have a creative power up.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for listening to me.
And me and to Jessica Renwick, our special guest for today.
And if you have any burning questions or you want to see photos of me as a child with my Barbie ponies, our inboxes are open and you can email us at listentomepodcast@gmail.com or you can DM us on Instagram.
Yeah, you can follow us on social media anywhere at listen to, that's the number 2 me podcast, Facebook, Twitter, and Insta. And if you like what you hear, let us know by rating this podcast and subscribing. All of that helps us so much.
It really does.
Yeah.
And as per usual, music in this episode is graciously provided by audionautics.com.
Bye.
E